Hi everyone, it's me again. Okay, so this next one I'm going to talk about, this is my first spiritual experience that I do remember. And my mum was obviously filled in any gaps I couldn't remember about. So my family, their first house was on an estate called Pennylands. And it was a brand new build, the house they moved into. But it was very, very old land. It was, if I'm correct, it was Anglo-Saxon. And there was a rumour that it was a burial ground. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it was a very, very old area. And all the houses were kind of built in a circle. And it was kind of like a community of its own. And like I said, it was a brand new build. And I remember my bedroom was at the back. And I don't even know if my sister had been born yet. But I was about 4. And I used to see a man in the bedroom. Now, I always remember it as a man in a rocking chair. But I'm pretty sure Mum said we didn't have a rocking chair. But I remember seeing this man, like he used to sit on my bed or something like that. But he was always a shadow man. And then, because there was another rumour that the alleyway next to the house was part of Dick Turpin's route, and he was known in this area. He apparently used to stop in Wifton on the Green, en route. But the rumour was that he used the alleyway down by the side of the house because it used to be a pathway before the houses were built. And the rumour was that Dick Turpin would use this route to get to where he wanted to go, which I found fascinating. Now, I also remember this tree outside the back of my house. And again, rumour had it that it used to be a hanging tree. And from what I've heard from people in the area was you could actually still see the rope marks on the tree limb, on the tree trunk. And I remember lying in bed, and if it wasn't the shadow man that I was seeing, I mean, he never hurt me. He was, as far as I remember, he didn't even say anything. He was just watching. And I remember hearing things from that tree. It wasn't sobs, but it was almost like weight. I suppose it's probably a rope sound I probably heard, to be fair. But it was kind of like a swinging sound, but I really can't phrase it. Like a kind of on that kind of sound from the tree. It's really hard to describe. And I remember some nights waking up and looking out and seeing people hang from the tree. And it was only in later years that we found out about the hanging tree and stuff like that. So the stuff that I was seeing was verified. But that house was very, very dark. Which we do think is down to the land. My mum got some kittens. Well, she had a cat that had kittens. And it was in the spare room, the blue room as they called it. And the cat had kittens. And some of them died. And my mum would say, for a good year or so, all you would hear was meowing from that room. All you would hear is meowing. No kittens to find because they were either in a different home or they passed away. But she goes, she tore that room apart and she couldn't find these kittens anywhere. And she said she'll never forget that sound. And she said they kept that room shut. They did not like to go in there in the slightest because of the energy in there. And she said there were times when she'd be home alone when my dad was at work, because my dad used to travel for work. And there would be times when she would be at home and she would just sit in front of the front door and just stare at the front door because she was petrified. She always felt something was watching her. And she was so terrified that she couldn't wait for my dad to get home. And they had a pretty rocky marriage anyway. It certainly wasn't a loving one. And she would sit there just waiting for him to come home because she would be petrified. And at this point, although my dad had grown up in quite a spiritual family, he was quite skeptic at this point. And even my dad had said, there were times when he was decorating and he would just feel like he was being watched, and he would just freeze in fear because you get that feeling. Sometimes you go to places and you just know you're being watched. And he said it was that feeling. He said it's a feeling he'll never forget. And if I remember correctly, I think we were there about 3 years. And then they got moved somewhere else. And but there was activity all over that estate. There was activity known for poltergeist activity, should I say. 2 houses down, or a Scottish couple. And Mum would say that they would be thrown, they would be pushed, things would move. They had like an attic, and they said they would always hear something in the attic. But these were new build. These weren't old houses. It was the land. And I think it does goes to show that it's not always a house that's haunted, it's the land it's built on. And I know they very much believe that in America as well, about the land being haunted, more haunted than the buildings on top. I don't know if there's still activity there now. My original plan for this video was to actually film it on the estate, but then I don't want the locals getting pissed off that the house is in a video regarding this stuff. So I chose not to take that risk and just do this from where I'm living now. But to an extent, I don't even like going back on that estate. I mean, I think I went there years and years ago just to see what I picked up on. And the energy was still very, very dark, but I didn't want to go in any of the houses. And this was my family's first haunted house. First in many, but it was the first one because my dad had always travelled. My dad was always even caravans, or he was in different parts. Like my dad's a Lancashire man, so he's not from this area. And so he wasn't really accustomed to really be in houses, and the houses he was in growing up, he was in several because he was fostered around the family after my nan died. Yeah, so this was their first time in a house, and it wasn't a good experience. It wasn't good at all. But that was kind of like the start of everything, I feel, because that opened up my dad a lot more. That was my first experience seeing anything, and opened up my path to being a medium. And it taught my mum how to be scared. Because the energies that she'd felt before that were okay. She'd never had over that many bad experiences. A couple, but not lived in a haunted house kind of experience. Yeah, so that was the story of our first house and what occurred in there.